On any large manufacturing facility, there are hazards you will need to be aware of. These involve your own personal safety when using plant and equipment, or the effects your activities might have on other people around the site. These hazards will be familiar to many of you. If you're a contractor working on the site, then you'll have completed your passport to safety, and it's important you keep this up to date. Always maintain a safe working environment and don't allow yourself to become complacent. Accidents can and do happen if you don't follow procedures. When working with any machinery, always wear the correct PPE and use the machinery in a correct manner. Entanglement in rotating equipment can be a real issue, so please ensure you're not wearing any loose clothing and long hair is tied back. Look out for any potential problems like vibration or noise risks and take the appropriate action, such as wearing ear protection or gloves, and always run the correct checks before using the machine. Electricity can't usually be seen, but its effects can certainly be felt. Familiarise yourself with the standards used across the site and follow correct procedures, checking that your equipment has a current PAT test, and that, where appropriate, you're using intrinsically safe tools. The site uses 110 volt electrics, and it is considered good practice to use RCDs wherever possible. Pre-use basic checks should be performed whenever electrical equipment is being used. Some of the work you may be doing could involve working at height, so if this is the case, then make sure you're working safely. Step ladders, and scaffolding should all be secured before use, and use a harness if necessary. There must always be 3 points of contact to ensure your own and others' safety, and check scaffolding to make sure it has a current scaff tag. Don't forget the safety of others working nearby either. Dropped objects can gather momentum and cause real damage to anyone walking underneath. Barriers and signage when working at height should always be deployed where there is a risk of falling objects. There are some areas of the site that are deemed hazardous for different reasons, where there may be a lack of oxygen, excessive heat, or flammable atmospheres, for example. These areas often involve working in confined spaces. Any work carried out in a confined space can only take place when a confined space permit has been issued. You'll need a safety watcher, a gas monitor, and the correct type of rescue plan before carrying out this type of work. You must always secure a confined space when leaving the area to stop any unauthorised persons entering. Throughout site, different chemicals are being manufactured and used, and many of these are corrosive or can give off fumes. It's important to wear the correct PPE for the area you're working in at all times. If in doubt, check with your supervisor. If you do get into difficulties, then you must seek immediate first aid. There are eye wash stations, diphotoring points, and safety showers throughout the site. Please ensure you know the location of these. If you see any leaks around the site, then report them to your site supervisor or nearest permit office straight away. Due to the age of the Stallingborough site, there's an asbestos presence in certain areas. If you think that the area you're working in might have asbestos present, then double check with your supervisor before starting any work. Many fire-resistant materials, roofing sheets or tiles and insulation will contain asbestos. A site asbestos register is maintained and located at the entrance of buildings to enable your supervisor to check against. If you're working with asbestos, then specific training will be required. We've covered fire safety elsewhere in another section, but it's worth reminding you about the assembly points and refuge areas throughout the site, which are found wherever you see these signs. Good housekeeping and removing combustible materials from your working area will help minimise the risk of fire. Safe storage of flammables, such as paints, must be adhered to. And don't forget, smoking is only allowed in designated areas. CCTV is used to monitor this. Flammable liquids and chemicals can be found all over the site, so there's a genuine reason for this rule. Lifting and shifting or manual handling health and safety is really important, and we can easily become complacent and forget to lift properly if we're in a rush. Bend from your knees and only lift what you can manage sensibly on your own. Assess every load and decide if 1 or 2 people are needed or using a lifting aid. Large lifts will be pre-planned. All lifts should be isolated by barriers and signage. Some larger lifts will involve a tannoy message and the localised clearing of a particular area. All lifting equipment will be colour-coded in accordance with the relevant test days. If you're using your own equipment, this must also have a valid test date. For your own and others' safety, never walk under a suspended load. Some of the plant areas are particularly noisy and mandatory hearing protection has to be worn wherever you see this sign. Slips, trips and falls can be avoided by a healthy housekeeping regime to clean up any spills and coil hose pipes etc. away in a safe place. Be aware of any loose tools or wires that could put you or your colleagues at risk and always work in a tidy, safe manner. Finally, think about your own personal safety. Don't put yourself in a hazardous position when working and avoid self-created pinch points. Be aware of your surroundings and think about what you're doing. We've covered a lot of ground in this section, and much of it is common sense, but it really is important that you take responsibility for your own on-site safety and reduce any risk factors for you and your colleagues. There are more questions to answer before you move on to the next section.